A few months ago, I asked all of you to recommend me and other viewers your favorite manga in the comments of one of my videos, and I put every single one of them into a list. There are over 100 recommendations, and I'm slowly making my way through them one at a time. In order to make things exciting for myself, I put them all on a wheel and spun for 5 manga to read. If they were complete, I read the entire thing, and if they were ongoing, I caught up with the current releases. Before we get into the reviews, let me know what you're currently reading in the comments. If the wheel decides, it might end up in one of these videos, and also you might be helping someone else find their new favorite. Anyway, let's check out the first spin and get to the video. I Sold My Lifespan for 10,000 yen per year is a manga adaptation of a light novel titled 3 Days of Happiness. Kusunoki is a lonely, lost, hopeless college student, and to make things worse, he's broke. After pawning his most prized possessions and still needing more money for food, he's told about a place where you can sell your lifespan, health, or time. The people here know everything that has happened and will happen in your life, and they use this information to determine that Kusunoki's remaining 30 years are worth just 300,000 yen, or around $2,030. But how do you place a value on a human life? Devastated after hearing this, Kusunoki decides that if his remaining life is worth so little, it must not be worth living at all, so he chooses to sell everything except 3 months. When he makes it back to his apartment with the money, he's greeted by the same woman who he sold his lifespan to, a woman named Miyagi who would have to observe his remaining time on Earth, aside from his last 3 days. What would you do if you found out you only had 3 months left to live? Would you make any significant changes to your day-to-day life? Maybe quit your job and work on a bucket list? Try to revisit past relationships? Maybe form new ones? I think most of us would do similar things, and that's why even though the premise of this story is a little bit out there, I found it to still be fairly relatable. Knowing that he has a limited amount of time left, Kusunoki gains the confidence and motivation to do pretty much whatever he wants, but things don't necessarily go the way he hopes. He finds himself having to face the harsh reality of the life he's lived. He has regrets. He's neglected his relationships and has no one to share his final days with except Miyagi, who's only there to observe. The two of them help each other learn what things make life meaningful, what brings value. They might be in very different situations, but them slowly coming to understand and appreciate the other brings them closer together. Yes, for all the lovers out there, this is a romance. And it's also one of those stories that will make you think about your own life. I Sold My Lifespan is only about 17 chapters and doesn't waste any time getting to the point. I got invested pretty quickly and ended up getting through the whole thing in one sitting. I liked it a lot, and if you have a couple of free hours and feel like having your heart torn apart and stitched back together a few times, you should check this out. Or wait who knows how long for it to be adapted into the movie that it should be by now. As a little girl, Coco becomes enchanted by the wonders of magic and longs to become a witch. But for her, this is an impossible goal because only those who are born as witches can use magic. Or so she thinks. Years later, Coco is presented with the opportunity to spy on a witch named Kifri as he performs magic to repair a broken chariot, and while she's watching, she learns a shocking truth. Anyone who can hold a pen and draw can learn how to use magic, as long as they have the knowledge and necessary resources to use it. As soon as she gets the chance, Coco runs straight to her room and takes out a special pen and picture book that she got from a strange witch at a magic festival as a child. Filled with a revitalized hope that her dream of becoming a witch can finally be realized, she begins drawing all sorts of spells from the book, using magic until she accidentally casts a forbidden spell that petrifies her mother. Kifri saves the grief-stricken Coco and promises to teach her magic so that one day she can learn to undo the spell and save her mother. I fully expected this to be a cutesy, cheery manga that was similar to Little Witch Academia, but it gets dark fast, and if you pay attention, it covers some pretty serious themes. The people that are responsible for governing this magical world are authoritarian in a sense, and there's a rogue faction of witches named the Brimhats, who are basically a terrorist organization that uses a somewhat justifiable cause to commit atrocities. There are almost 70 chapters, and I haven't been bored or taken out of the story a single time yet. Our main character Coco is just a normal girl as far as we know. She doesn't have a gimmick that naturally makes her a better witch than anyone else. She's just a girl with a goal in mind and practices as hard as she can to be better. She's flung into this world with no experience and no idea how things work. Coco is truly out of her depth most of the time, but even in hopeless situations, she remains optimistic and determined. All around, just a great protagonist. The supporting cast is pretty dope too. I don't think there's a single character in Witch Hat that I've come across who I just don't like. They're all very believable, and even though a few of them have quirks that might be a little annoying to some people, overall, they remain grounded in terms of personality, and none of them go to waste. Witch Hat Atelier is actually one of the most beautiful comics that I've ever seen. The art is just rich with eye-catching details. The mangaka Kamome Shidahama does an amazing job at making this fantasy world feel even more magical just from the way that she uses shading to convey lighting. The creatures and the environment are so imaginative. The characters all have unique and diverse designs. They're also highly expressive and need to be, because at times the story is very emotional. Even the way the manga is paneled is creative in a way that I personally haven't seen. The pages will be decorated with designs, runes, or basically whatever is relevant to the location of the story at the moment, and it's just charming. I'm not the biggest on collecting physical manga, but I actually started buying the volumes when I caught up. I was already a pretty big fan of Kamome because of her work making comic book covers for Marvel and DC, but after reading Witch Hat, she's become one of my favorite mangaka just because her style is so unique. Maybe I'm overhyping it. I would love to know if you all have seen anything like it before, so please leave a comment. This is Chihiro. As a child, he spends his time learning how to forge katana with his father Kunishige. Kunishige is a famous swordsmith known for his special technique that imbues the katana he makes with sorcery. Because of 6 magical swords he creates, a senseless war that takes place sometime before the story begins is ended. After seeing how passionate his father is about sword making, Chihiro wants to follow in his footsteps, but he doesn't get the chance to do it because 3 sorcerers show up, destroy their home, kill Kunishige, and steal all 6 of the katana. Chihiro blacks out, and after waking up confused, he sees his father's lifeless body holding onto a 7th sword that he died protecting. From this day on, Chihiro dedicates his life to getting revenge, taking the swords back, and showing the sorcerers who stole them just what those katana meant to his father. The plot of Kagurabachi isn't anything spectacular, and that's fine. I don't think a story needs to reinvent the wheel in order to be good. And who doesn't love a good revenge tale, even though they typically play out in very similar ways? Kagurabachi takes place in an unforgiving, violent environment that's plagued by the crimes of evil sorcerers and the Yakuza. Chihiro, his mentor Shiba, and a government organization of sorcerers all have similar goals. Kill the bad guys and get the swords back. But the dynamic between them changes, and I think that's going to lead to some really entertaining developments later on. Speaking of Chihiro, I wasn't a big fan of him at first. I think he's still a little bit dry at times, and in the earlier chapters, he was too edgy for my tastes. Everything was all, I cannot allow scum like you to wield katana, and I keep this scar on my face because it reminds me to hate everyone. Gosh. He was like an emo middle schooler, but with the introduction of a character named Char, he actually develops more of a personality. So far, I would say the most consistently memorable characters have been the villains, because they have this aura about them that's just so damn cold. But the further you get into the manga, the good sorcerers kind of catch up. They all look drippy as hell, by the way. Again, another series with some great character design. This might be superficial, but when characters have fire outfits, the chance of me reading goes up by about 200%. One thing I can say for sure about Kagurabachi is that it kicks ass. Based on the mangaka Takeru Hokazono's past work, you can tell that they enjoy stories that take place in this type of gritty setting where it doesn't feel like anyone is too safe from the violence of the underworld. Because of this, Kagurabachi is a bit darker and more gruesome than your typical shonen, but it still is a shonen, so if you have caviar tastes when it comes to manga, don't expect anything life-changing here. One of my friends compared Kagurabachi to Kill Bill, and at first, I thought they were exaggerating because those are 2 of my favorite movies. But this is a pretty accurate statement. They clearly served as an inspiration for Takeru's style in general. You can see this in one of his past works, Rock's Death Testament, and several times in Kagurabachi. The scene where the bride fights the crazy 88s is basically where Takeru got his style from in general. He's recreated it several times over. The heroes are floaty while cutting through their enemies with ease. Blood splatters around and limbs fly everywhere. If there is anything that's going to convince you to give Kagurabachi a chance, it's the action for sure. It looks clean. Even though there can be a lot happening on a page, it's not hard to follow at all like some other manga can be. Also, if you're interested, you can actually watch a narrated version of the first 3 chapters on the Shonen Jump YouTube channel. Eiji Urashima is a college student with a dark secret. He's the son of an infamous serial killer known as LL. After a night of drinking with his friends, Eiji wakes up 4 days later with a new girlfriend, a new reputation, and no recollection of what he's been up to. While trying to piece together the events of the time he's lost, Eiji discovers that he has another personality inhabiting his body, and that they're both the prime suspect of a woman's murder. As he searches for evidence to clear his name while trying to learn more about his other self, Eiji's life is thrown into disarray. He finds himself mixed up with a criminal organization, being followed by a mysterious woman, and forced to confront the sins of his father. On paper, My Dearest Self with Malice Aforethought should be one of my favorite manga ever. Honestly, just the fact that it's a psychological crime thriller alone had me more than excited to read it. The premise is interesting and it has a really strong beginning. When I did start reading it, I actually had trouble putting it down. Seeing Eiji race against his personality swaps while trying to piece together evidence that proves his innocence kept me on the edge of my seat. What makes it even more thrilling is the fact that he's kind of in a small game of cat and mouse with his other personality. He wants to learn more about his other self, but his other self is trying to hide the truth. I am a fan of many things in this manga. Most of the characters are well written, the art is highly detailed, realistic, and expressive, but there are still plenty of flaws present throughout it. I hate to use the word edgy so much, especially for a manga that's pretty grim and gruesome already, but sometimes the edginess in this is kind of corny. It gets to be a bit much. Coming in at 11 volumes and around 98 chapters, it feels like My Dearest Self overstays its welcome. The first third of it is really good. If the beginning arc was a standalone piece of work, I would give this a strong recommendation, but in the subsequent chapters, the story becomes convoluted, mostly due to the amount of twists that are forced in. It felt like literally every character in the manga started having these grand reveals that they had been involved in the story since before it began. It was nice at first, but some of them ended up not even mattering all that much either. Overall, I would say My Dearest Self is just okay. Slight trigger warning for this next one. It's a slice of life manga that focuses on some serious mental health topics like SA, trauma, and other things. Kaide is the survivor of an assault by the hands of one of his female middle school teachers. For a while, this completely derails his life, but he regains hope after leaving to attend an all-boys high school. What he wants the most is a sense of normalcy. He wants to hang out with his friends, talk to and date girls, just like any normal high school boy, but he slowly realizes that his normal is different from most of the kids his age. Kaide struggles with PTSD and has trouble trusting adults because they failed him so terribly. Sensitive Boy is a coming-of-age manga about Kaide navigating his complex feelings caused by his past trauma, so that he can move forward and truly experience what life has to offer. There are a lot of things that I appreciate about this manga and the way it handles its very serious topics with care. For one, it treats assault as the horrifying and scarring thing it is. Even though Kaide is a boy who was taken advantage of by a woman, there isn't a single moment where the manga pokes fun at his situation or makes any distasteful jokes about it. The depictions of dissociation and panic attacks are shocking and kind of accurate. I couldn't find out much about the mangaka, but you can tell there's someone who has at least done their research. The writing isn't always the best. For a manga that has a lot to say about some serious issues, it occasionally stumbles its way around them. I think it has a very strong start, but around chapter 17, it begins to take a slight dip in narrative quality, in my opinion. Kaide has a love interest early on whose personality randomly does a complete 180. Not to spoil, but it's just a little bit jarring to see her become so strange within a few pages. Even though I wasn't feeling it too much, I went ahead and just caught up with the manga, and I started getting really confused for a minute because Kaide began feeling like a side character. Well, it turns out the manga isn't just about him. Right now it's about one of his friends who starts dating a girl that he's liked for years. I'd say this arc is off to a decent start. It's covering a whole different set of issues, and I feel like it has the potential to be even better. But this is a manga that I might end up waiting a few months at a time to just randomly catch up on when I'm bored. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but it just isn't high on my list of priorities in terms of reading. Now that we're done talking about them, I'm going to rank them all 1 to 5 based purely on my level of enjoyment of them. At 5th, we have Sensitive Boy. I appreciate what it tries to say about mental health issues, but as a manga, it just feels like it's lacking at the moment. Number 4 is My Dearest Self with Malice Aforethought. I love the premise of this manga, and the first third of it is really entertaining, but around the halfway mark, it starts to get a bit unserious. It has a messy middle and an ending that manages to be only slightly satisfying and a bit underwhelming at the same time. And third is Kagurabachi. I thought it was hilarious that I ended up landing on this one in the first place. The video where I asked everyone to recommend me a manga came out around the time the Kagurabachi memes were at their peak. So the comments were filled with Kagurabachi sweep and Kagurabachi is the GOAT and all that other stuff. I'm surprised I ended up liking it as much as I do. It's not spectacular just yet, but it looks cool, has a cinematic art style, and an interesting enough story. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. And second is I Sold My Lifespan for 10,000 yen a day. This is a pretty short manga that I was able to read in just one sitting, and it was a hell of a ride. I'm sure this is going to make a great movie one day. It's really emotional with a relatable message that will just make you want to live more. Hat Atelier is without a doubt the best manga out of these 5. I'm actually really glad that this was recommended to me and it has become a recent favorite of mine. Please do not allow the fact that the protagonist is a little girl stop you from reading this. It's a beautiful story with stunning artwork set in an imaginative world filled with tragedy, hope, and magic. There is an anime confirmed, which is potentially really exciting if it can live up to the beauty of the manga. I will most likely be making an entire video dedicated to this in the future, so if you're interested in seeing it, make sure you subscribe. You can check the description for my socials, and if you're interested in supporting just a little bit more, you can join my Patreon and gain access to all sorts of bonus content over there. Thanks for watching. Peace.